Welcome back to the AI Word Series. I'm excited to have with us today my friend Lakshmi Purushothaman, who's the former VP of Data Science, Engineering, and Analytics at Freddie Mac and founder of Luminar Data Solutions. Lakshmi, welcome.
So thank you, Brooke, for having me here. I have spent over 20 years in financial services sector at the intersection of data, AI, and enterprise transformation. And as part of Luminar Data Solutions, I help organizations navigate the complexity of AI adoption and making it more accessible and trustworthy. Is that good enough?
Such an important conversation and so apt given the step from Freddie Mac recently, which I'm sure we'll get into. But before we do that, let's announce the word of the week, which is foundation, which, as we know, can go a number of different ways in relationship to the AI applicability, whether it be, for example, the foundation model would be one perspective, and also the foundation of AI governance and what is its cornerstone in relationship to AI in and of itself. So let's jump into our first question. And when you hear the word foundation, what's the first story, image, or thought that comes to mind when we use the word foundation for you?
So the first thing that comes to mind is the picture of pouring concrete for a house, right? No one posts the photos of the foundation in Instagram, but if it's wrong, you feel it every single day.
I say
Right,
that's the ugly part, right? That's not the pretty stuff.
So your doors don't close, or you see cracks on the wall, and it basically makes the whole structure fragile. AI governance is like the concrete slab for AI, right? If it's done well, it's invisible, but it's painfully aware if it is not done well.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. So let's talk about how foundation, the word foundation, is shaping how you facilitate AI's role. And we're certainly can talk mortgage. It's our career path, but AI is everywhere all at once. So you can certainly delve to the personal side if it fits.
So I'd like to kind of look at it both ways, right? From a personal life, the stronger the governance foundation is, the more comfortable I will be to letting AI into my life, right? If there are clear transparency with the data usage, bias, testing and accountability, if there are issues, then it'll be more willing to use it for my healthcare decisions or banking, services.
Our everyday life, right?
Right. But without that, the default reaction is fear, and that slows down the benefits for everyone. When we look in the mortgage space, it's very similar, right? There is a foundation where the organizations provide transparency to the customers, how their models are being evaluated, how they're ensuring that the data is being protected well, especially the very sensitive data like income and payment, right? Credit information, and making sure that the decisions that come out of their system, especially if you're lending and approving loans, how unbiased that information is and how they can actually prove that, not only for today but for an ongoing basis, because AI is a living system. So we need to be able to continuously give that confidence and trust to our borrowers.
And I think you've struck a chord there in relationship to AI being a living system. We're not used to that necessarily in the context of technology and how it's evolving forms, whether it be Gen AI or agentic AI. The buzzwords, literally, I think it's the number one buzzword for 2025 is agentic AI. So how do you, as an expert in data, how do you frame what you knew in a traditional sense of machine learning, for example, and how it's evolved today? What would you say would be a practical side for someone who is less familiar with the back end? What would you say someone needs to look out for?
That's a very great question. And I can think of it as this way, right? So again, going back to my previous analogy, if governance is the concrete, data is like the steel rebar, right? That's running through and reinforces and keeps your foundation strong. So we can think of it as data plays a significant role in AI, whether it's training data sets. We need to have clarity as to, right, what data is being used. And is it reliable? Is it ethically sourced? Is it right? What are some of the biasness that's inherent in that data that we need to be aware of? And how do we ensure we bring that human aspect, right? When a human looks at the data and says, oh, this doesn't feel right or looks right. Now that needs to be somehow continuously being embedded in this AI process because it's living and learning. So having to look at all these aspects of data to understand your quality, your lineage, your definitions, all these become much more important because, as we mentioned earlier, the AI is learning and continuously evolving. So the data you feed in matters a lot, how it's going to
It
progress.
always matter. And right? I mean, we could have had this conversation 5 years ago, and we would have said that the data was important. That is not new, but to your point, it's elevated, and it's also the elevation of the risk associated with it is dependent on its use case as well, right? That it's not one size fits all in that regard. So, on a note of that, talk about the variance in the data. And if someone happens to be new to AI, for example, and they're looking at they're being pitched whatever variation, whether it be a sales or an operations version of something that's going to improve their efficiency and cut costs, the two key indicators for artificial intelligence. What do you think about that in relationship to what are questions that someone should ask about the utilization of build versus buy, and how important is the data, data decisions and the availability of the data that will be used?
So, I mean, you've got a lot of great questions and points in there. So I would say that so let's talk about the data from the first point of AI, right? So think of an example where when you're looking at, let's say you're looking at home price valuation and you're looking at data sets, where you want to be looking at, you want a good pricing information from all your zip codes in your county. And you have a third party, data provider who says, yes, I have coverage of 60% of, Virginia's counties and 40% of Florida counties. Now, it's not about in the past, we could be able to say, okay, this may be enough for our business process. But with AI, you'll have to think about what is your model looking to do. And if you're actually looking at, let's say, Florida counties or a regional decision-making model or a specific type of decisions, you will be looking to see what the coverage should be, right? And also, what is the timeliness of that data? Is it coming 6 months ahead? Is it real time, day to day? Because if you're pricing your homes this month and your data is 6 months outdated, typically if it's a human in the loop, they would probably go pull some manual stuff or collect information. Now, this model does not have that, right? Capability to do it. So we have to think about all those things. Even it's the same with the builder versus buy. If you're buying, we need to ask these questions, right? From the vendor, how they have built the model, whether you're building the model, buying the model, or buying the data, or a combination of both. So all these things matter, and have they even have license to use that?
Well, and that's another key piece with AI, right? Is where is the data and what's the source, and how does that cascade into the relevance of what your intended outcome is?
Yes.
Right.
And one of the biggest risks with AI is data drift, right? So that is a big component. So as the data mix coming in, we will have to continuously see what is the drift, how does that impact our models.
So can I interrupt you for 1 second? Share with us, what is data drift?
So data drift is, think of it as an example where we used to say that we have, 80, 90% of our borrowers were employed, right? But there is a change in shift. More people do self-employment, more people do consulting. So over the years, there is a drift, right, of the type of employment people have. Whether, right, as that changes, you have a drift in your data. Now, if your model was trained, primarily look for employed borrowers with a paycheck every 2 weeks. But then things have changed over the year, over the time, last 2 years, 3 years. You'll have to really think about how your model is going to take that into consideration, right? And that happens with your monitoring model evaluation, all these processes that will help you to look for these potential changes in your data.
And as you continue to share your perspective, the thing that keeps coming to mind as you're speaking is your reference to that human in the loop and that reference point that humans bring to the table and its underlying foundation of how important that is. And I know we've had enough conversations beyond today for me to know how firmly you believe in the importance of having humans at the appropriate part so that we can use technology as an adjunct, not necessarily a replacement.
I completely agree with that statement. And I think I can emphasize the importance of human in the loop in all aspects of AI, right? Development, whether it's identifying the right use case and then trying to be able to identify the right training data sets and then what is the source of truth, right? That is very important.
Right.
And then being able to design it in the way with all these things we discussed, building the right governance, right processes.
Okay, so let's jump there, right? Like perfect setup once again. Within the course of the last recent days, Freddie Mac has issued their bulletin 2025-16, which introduces one more element to AI ML, and that is the governance framework. We'll do a separate session on it, okay? But give me your quick firsthand perspective from having worked at Freddie for so long. What's it say to you?
It actually is a very fascinating one, and I feel like it actually provides you with an architectural blueprint or foundation building, right?
Great.
It basically says that what we require is the governance frameworks, the transparent policies, the audits, the segregation of duties. So it gives you the accountability, and all these things will really reinforce this concrete foundation. And as you had mentioned, leveling it up. And what that means, right, as we talked about in the mortgage industry, it really it sets up a clear accountability, whether you're using third-party vendors or build versus buy. How do you map your AI risks and who measures them and who manages them? So that if you have a borrower's, there is a situation where they're buying their first home, you want to make sure they can trust that AI that's evaluating their application fair and they're transparent and accountable. So I think it's a great blueprint framework. Organizations should be able to take that and Luminar and Lean Into Possible. We are at a great position to help these organizations build this foundation for them so that they can have a great success with AI adoption.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's from my perspective and the review of it is that there's not anything so onerous in the way that it's been outlined within the bulletin that would, number one, many people are already doing parts and or pieces of it. And I know firsthand that some organizations are like, oh, check, already done. Right. And then there are others that they may have pieces of it, but they have the components, but not the full blueprint as you described, right? It doesn't have the full specs. It's only parts and pieces. So pulling that together from a comprehensive perspective went from a suggestion to being a requirement within the context of what's been issued. So we'll come back to that another day, right?
Yes. I think I'd leave with a couple of add-ons to what you just mentioned. One is, yes, we do have it there, but what I would say is when you apply AI, especially as we mentioned about like agentic AI, Gen AI, traditional AI, there are components that we need to add on to. So I think what this helps us is to take a fresh look at those aspects. Even if you have a data governance, what do you need to add on to, right? In terms of these things and being able to provide a good story, right? Being able to tell how you're starting and how you're ongoingly ending across all these different types of systems, which was itself quite a task to do. But now you're adding a whole layer of AI models and applications on top of it. So having to build that clear story would be where these blueprint would have.
It's a perfect example of leveling up with the lens of AI, right? That's you take what it is you know, and now we need to add on to that in a given scenario based on how an organization is choosing to incorporate those letters AI. And it's those variations that can be significant. Okay, so we need to wrap up today. You know, I like to close on something fun. Useful tip. Share with us. What do you think? What would you like to share today as to how AI can be used in a fun or practical way?
I would say there was a fun way. Recently, we had, a party at home, and some of the pictures that we were taken, one of our friends had actually used an AI app and converted it into a video. It was really hilarious and fun to watch, even though none of us did any of those things,
Cautionary tale there, maybe.
Yeah, that is true. But it was really fun as you're talking and kind of like sharing food or giving food, you're kind of doing a slight dance movement or something like that. And you put a music background on it. It makes it sound like we had like a nice dance party instead of just a casual, thing.
A calm dinner, right?
Yes,
Who
exactly.
knew, right? Your neighbors came and knocked on the door and told you to quiet down.
So I would say that was one of the nice ways of using AI, which I thought was really cool. It was called, I think, Nano Banana or something like that.
Oh, that's Google's product. Yeah, Nano Banana. Yeah, that's that's an easy one to use. So,
Yeah.
for those who'd like to transform their holiday parties into fun clips afterwards, Nano Banana is one to use. Yeah, that's excellent.
Exactly. So yeah. So I would say, there's a lot of interesting ways to use AI, and it does definitely helps you to kind of take your day to day things and making it a lot more fun and interesting in different ways.
Exactly. Right? It's leaning into possible in new and different ways. So, thank you for being with us today, Lakshmi. I look
Thank you.
forward to our future conversations.
Likewise.